Type 2 Hero by Mad Nimrod. Chapter 14, Conflict and Class. Alright, before we begin, I just want to say, if you enjoy, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Liking and commenting really helps with the algorithm. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into the chapter.
What an exciting start to the tournament!
President Mike cheered as Sakai and Ashido left the arena.
Once again, Class 1C amazes us. But will this amazement continue?
We'll just have to wait and see. Izuku laughed at his teacher's antics. Up next is gonna be Choji Ryunosuke of Class 1C versus Tokoyami Fumikage of Class 1A. Would those two please come on stage? There was another cheer from the audience as the next two contenders approached the stage. From one side, the dark and enigmatic Tokoyami walked in silence. Hovering over him was his quirk, the intelligent Dark Shadow. From the other side strode Choji, tall and strong. His long fur waved dramatically as he stepped up the arena. As Mount Lady made her opening statement of rules before beginning the fight, Choji thought back to the conversation he had with his classmates while Sakai was fighting Ashido.
This is a bad matchup.
Moriboshi asked Choji as she and their classmates chatted in their waiting room.
I'm fighting Tokoyami next.
Choji explained.
It's basically gonna be a 2v1 fight. And one of them is a fucking kaiju. I'm strong, but I gotta get close. And his quirk is very good at keeping things from getting close.
Then find a way to get close, Moriboshi plainly stated as she formed a flower out of ice. Think of what you're good at, and do it.
Think of what I'm good at,
the Wookiee thought as the match began. He watched with a flat expression as Tokoyami sent Dark Shadow forward, eager to finish the fight quickly.
I can't counter that beast.
He watched the quirk beast get close, giving an avian roar as it raised its claws high.
I can't fight it.
Dark Shadow swung down, aiming at the Wookiee.
So?
Mere moments before impact, Choji leaped aside. Instead of striking the student, Dark Shadow's claws slammed into the ground, breaking the concrete and sending small chunks flying into the air.
I'll just go around it!
His face now hardened with a glare of determination. Choji grabbed one of the flying chunks of concrete and hurled it at Tokoyami. Flying faster than Dark Shadow could react, the concrete struck Tokoyami in the arm. The bird boy yelled in pain and surprise. Dark Shadow turned to his master, and Choji exploited their inattention to grab a couple more chunks of the arena. As Dark Shadow turned back to Choji, its eyes widened in shock as the pieces in Choji's hand flew past at high speed. Tokoyami screamed in pain as the chunks hit him in the shoulder and leg, bringing him to his knee. Ignoring the excited screams of President Mike, Choji rushed the kneeling student. Dark Shadow flew between the two and swung his claws at the Wookiee. Choji jumped over the claws and landed on Dark Shadow's head before jumping off, still aiming at Tokoyami. With a loud battle cry, Choji swung his arms down as he landed. The hero student rolled to the side in time to avoid the blow, watching in shock as Choji slammed down hard enough to crack the concrete floor. Giving Tokoyami an angry stare, the Wookiee dug in his fingers into the cracks and yanked up a large chunk of concrete. He hurled it at Tokoyami, but this time Dark Shadow was fast enough to get in the way. The quirk laughed as it smashed the chunk into pieces before rushing at Choji. Choji ran at Dark Shadow, ducking and sliding under the rampaging quirk beast. Picking up some of the concrete Dark Shadow smashed, Choji shot them at Tokoyami. This time, Tokoyami was attentive enough to dodge, but in doing so gave Choji the time needed to close the gap between the two. He just needed one hit. Choji was strong enough that one good hit would disable the hero student. He was meters away now. He could see Tokoyami's eyes widen in fear. Choji gave a roar and raised his fist. It was now or never. It was never. Mere seconds before Choji could deck Tokoyami, Dark Shadow had spun around and caught up with the Wookiee. The quirk beast quickly caught Choji's arm before expanding to grab his entire body. The Gen Ed student roared and struggled, but failed to break free. Tokoyami was still in shock at what almost happened, actually falling backwards from where Choji had almost hit him. The bird-headed student just stared for a few moments before taking a breath and getting back to his feet. "You did well," Tokoyami told Choji. "Do not shame in this defeat." With a gesture, Tokoyami sent Dark Shadow to the edge of the arena and tossed Choji. He tried to grab onto Dark Shadow as he fell, but Choji missed and hit the grass with a thud. The audience was actually silent for a good 10 seconds before the cheering began.
And there we go!
President Mike yelled through the stadium.
The winner of the second match is Tokoyami Fumikage. I gotta say, after the beating he took, I was not expecting him to snatch victory like that.
Me either, Izuku agreed. I'll admit, I was a bit worried about my classmate down there, but then he started dominating the fight, and then was caught at literally the last second. It was one twist after another, like a pretzel.
And speaking of pretzels,
Mike spoke up,
it might be a good time to grab some refreshments. We gotta take a few minutes to repair the arena, so go grab them while you can.
Some of the audience shuffled around to do just that while the two competitors exited the field. Tokoyami was staggering from all the injuries, and Choji was just looking down as he left. He was hoping he wouldn't be the first one out, but like he said before the match, this was a bad matchup. Still, he put up a good fight at least. He was really looking forward to seeing how everyone else did. Melissa hummed as she walked down the hallway. It was fun hanging out with Class 1C kids, but since she wasn't even completing, let alone in their class, she couldn't stay in their room. She could have sat with the other 3H kids who came to watch, but honestly she felt like stretching her legs. After all, even though this arena was on UA grounds, it wasn't usually open to exploration like it was today, so she was interested in seeing as much of it as she could. She was so engrossed in taking in every detail, she almost didn't hear two people talking around the corner. So we'll need to act the part if anyone asks. This is quite unusual, but I'll do my best. She stopped, acting a part. What was going on? She initially thought these might be villains or miscreants, before realizing she recognized the first voice. That was Principal Nezu. But who was he talking to? They sounded kind of familiar, but not enough to be recognizable. Moving against the wall, she quietly slid closer to the corner to listen in. Normally she wasn't one for eavesdropping, but if Nezu was involved... Did you contact the other students to tell them about this? The second voice asked. I will during the after-festival party, Nezu replied. It was quite hilarious seeing that student imitate your head like that. And I also want them to know they won't be in trouble for it. I am glad, the second voice sighed. Whatever was your decision with young Monoma, anyway? Demotion, Nezu piped up. He's been moved to Class 1D General Education for the remainder of the year. If his behavior improves, he may be moved back to 1B next year. If he doesn't get better, though, he'll be there for the remainder of his high school years. Speaking of remaining time, you sure you have enough time to hand out the medals?
Of course, the other voice laughed. I haven't buffed up all day. I have enough time to hand out the medals and even attend the party a bit.
Glad to hear that, All Might. Melissa froze. All Might? Uncle Might was the other person? He didn't sound anything like he should. Was he sick? Her father did mention something was wrong, but never went into detail. She was really tempted to look around the corner now. Also, Nezu continued, I must ask, have you spoken with Midoriya-kun yet? Last I heard, you were still avoiding him.
Is it that obvious?
Oh, definitely. Anytime he's present for hero class, you fail to appear. Wouldn't it be better to just come out and apologize for what you told him? Apologize? To Midoriya-kun? What could Uncle Might have?
Would he even want to see me? I told him he couldn't be a hero just because he was quirkless.
What? And that was a horrible mistake on your part, Nezu affirmed. But Midoriya-kun still idolizes you. The fact he tried to defend you from midnight is proof of that.
But that's just it,
All Might exclaimed.
Mistakes are generally unintentional. But back then I said with finality and belief I was right. For almost a year I thought I was right. It wasn't until I encountered Night Eye a few weeks ago, where he reminded me of what I used to be, that it ever occurred to me I was wrong. Nezu, the day I left young Midoriya on a roof after breaking his heart, it would have been easy for him to have jumped off the side after what I said to him. Even if he wanted to forgive me, would I deserve it? There was a brief silence as everyone processed what was heard. Melissa had to outright cover her mouth after hearing all that. She had no idea that sort of thing happened between her uncle and her friend. She knew Izuku had it rough before his favorite hero to tell him that, and then apparently leave him on a roof. No one had told her about that. Heck, she met Uncle Might a few times since her transfer, and he never mentioned Midoriya at all. Whether or not you deserve forgiveness, Nezu solemnly broke the silence and interrupted Melissa's thoughts, is not up to me nor you, Yagi-san. Only the offended party can decide, but he can't decide unless you meet him. Give it some thought, alright? Melissa heard a patting sound, presumably Nezu patting All Might's side, before a series of heavy footsteps was heard heading away. She didn't move an inch. That was way too much to take in, and she didn't know how to take it all. And what do you think about this, Melissa? The quirkless girl stiffened. Nezu knew she was there. You have a very distinct gait, the principal continued from around the corner, and I am an animal with exceptional hearing. Now, you've learned a few things and you never thought you'd learn. What will you do with this knowledge, I wonder? Melissa didn't answer. Couldn't answer. After a few moments, she heard Nezu give a hum and walk away. At least he wasn't expecting an immediate response. After all, how was one supposed to handle the fact that their perfect uncle had discriminated against someone as quirkless as she was? And we're back!
President Mike roared to the audience as Simontas finished straightening up the arena.
Did everyone get what they need? Good, 'cause here comes the next match. Sound it off, Mito-kun.
You got it, Izuku cheerfully replied. Up next is a... Mike Sensei, do I have to read this part too?
Come on, kid, it'll be funny. Izuku gave a sigh as he continued.
Up next is a catfight between class presidents. From Class 1C, we have Kagero Kiana. From Class 1A, Yaoyorozu Momo steps up. Kagero-san was the winner of the past 2 events, and Yaoyorozu-san is one of the star students of the hero course. I'd honestly say that the winner of this next match is anyone's guess.
The 2 students in question calmly and quietly strode onto the newly refurbished arena. Momo had her top unzipped, revealing her black tank top and ready to fabricate any large objects she might need. Her face bore a look of hardened determination. Kagero just took a few steps back before flapping her wings hard, launching her onto the arena. She landed gracefully, giving a soft smile at her opponent. Her smile bore no hint of arrogance or pride. Once both girls were up, Mount Lady stepped forward and looked down at the 2 competitors.
You all remember the rules, right?
She asked. With an affirmation from both girls, she straightened up and stepped back.
You 2 ready? One moment.
Kagero called as she raised her hand.
Oh?
Mike voice.
What's this?
Yaoyorozu-san.
The angelic student addressed her opponent.
You intend to make a weapon for this match, yes? In the spirit of fairness, I was wondering if perhaps you could make me one as well.
Appealing to our opponent for a weapon.
Mike laughed.
Never expected to see that.
You have wings.
Momo pointed out.
Flying isn't Flying is an advantage, isn't it? Only if I fly.
Kagero smiled.
However, in the same spirit of fairness, I have no intention of flying during this match. I might use my wings, but I will not be leaving the ground. Surely such a vow is worth bequeathing a weapon, no?
The audience muttered to each other at this twist, as Momo thought about it. After a moment, she shrugged.
What sort of weapon? A dual sword.
Kagero walked over to her peer.
Preferably a longsword, or a rapier-style weapon.
Momo nodded and went to work crafting her sword. At the same time, Momo fabricated herself a sword with an accompanying shield. Kagero reached Momo as the weapons were finished. Both swords had dull edges, but were otherwise well built and sturdy. Kagero took the offered sword and gave it a few experimental swings before smiling her satisfaction.
Need a shield?
Momo offered, only for Kagero to move her wings.
I have my shields.
The Gen Ed student nodded before returning to her spot. As she did, Kagero faced Momo and took up a fighting stance. She was ready.
I can't underestimate her.
Momo thought to herself.
She didn't do much during the first 2 events, which means she hasn't shown what she can really do. Okay.
Mount Lady spoke up again.
You both ready?
With a nod from both girls, the giant heroine smiled and waved her hand.
Begin!
The instant the match began, Kagero dashed at Momo, flapping her wings to increase her speed. The hero student barely raised her shield in time to block the angel's blade. Momo grunted with effort as she pushed Kiana back, swinging her sword at an opening. To the surprise of everyone, Kiana really did block Momo's sword with her wing. To Momo's surprise, hitting the wing felt nothing like she expected. From what Momo had seen, people with wings were fairly lightweight people. In order to achieve flight, they usually had hollow bones and a light frame. This meant they were not the most durable people. However, hitting Kiana's wave gave Momo the impression that the winged girl was anything but fragile. If anything, her sword almost bounced from the impact. It was like hitting a brick wrapped in a blanket. Kiana knew this, and she smiled as she used her wing to push Momo back before moving in close. Again, however, her blade met Momo's shield.
What a start!
Mike yelled.
I did not expect Kagero to use her wings like that.
Flight is not our only skill.
Midoriya happily stated as the two girls fought. Everyone in the stands watched the fight the best they could. Both girls were incredibly fast, their blades being little more than flashes of light, interspersed with feathered wings.
You are wonderful!
Kiana laughed as she parried another blow.
What style are you using? 11th Storm? Actually, it's Crimson Dervish.
Momo replied as she swung at Kiana again.
I've simply come up with a way to accommodate a shield into that style. Which means it can't be countered by Sundering Weave.
Kagero whistled. One sec, going to take a drink.
Just as clever as I'd expected from the only daughter of the Yaoyorozu CEO.
The two girls continued fighting, though anyone who knew Momo could see her prior discomfort had all but vanished. She was still determined, but she wasn't out of her element anymore. Her confidence grew as she pressed the offensive, a smile forming on her face. Neither combatant seemed to notice how their fight took them dangerously close to the edge of the arena. Suddenly, a lucky hit from Kiana sent Momo's shield out of her grip and out of the arena. Momo grit her teeth, knowing her opponent wouldn't give her time to make another, and kept fighting best she could. However, after a wide swing from Momo, Kiana ducked and spun, batting Yaoyorozu with her wing and sending the hero student flying from the arena. The minute she hit the grass, the PA system blared and Momo was declared defeated. Neither she nor Kiana moved from their respective spots, catching their breath after the high-speed sword fight. After a minute, though, both girls just started laughing.
That was awesome!
Kagero said as she hopped down to help Momo to her feet.
We must spar again sometime. I promise not to use my wings next time. No, go right ahead.
Momo smirked.
It's clear I need to figure out how to counter those things.
This elicited another laugh from Kagero as the two girls made their way to Recovery Girl's office. Kagero Kiana may have won that fight, but it seemed like they both gained a new friend. Chapter 15. Class and Display. One sec, y'all. Gonna take a drink again. Kiana and Momo had just gotten in from their match. While Oya Neko was making his way to the arena, Moriboshi was doing stretches in her waiting room. To be honest, she was the least bit nervous. Her first opponent would be Hatsume Mei, the crazy inventor girl that Midoriya spoke highly of. She had seen the sort of gadgets the girl had pulled during both the obstacle race and the cavalry battle. Who knew what sort of gear she would use in their fight?
Hello!
A loud voice hollered as the door slammed open. Moriboshi actually gave a squawk of surprise and fell off her feet as the inventor in question burst into the room.
How you doing, fight buddy? Hatsume-san?
Moriboshi stuttered from her spot on the floor.
What are you doing in here? Came to talk to you. Duh.
The support course student giggled as she plopped herself down next to Moriboshi.
You're gonna be my opponent, and you're a friend of Mito-chan, so I figured I'd be honest with ya. I have no intention of winning this festival. What?
The ice wielder asked after a brief silence.
Yeah,
May affirmed.
I never wanted to win this thing. Most students want to do good in these festivals to show off to heroes. But I just wanted to get this far to show off my babies to the various support companies that watch these things. Unusual, but alright.
Moriboshi sat up and turned to her opponent before continuing.
And why did you want to talk to me before our match? Because I need your help.
May grinned.
I have a fair few babies I want to show off. But the best way to do that is for someone to use them. So, if you're willing to help me show off my babies, I'll be willing to throw the match without any resistance. Just help for, 10 minutes. After that, I'll just hop out of bounds by myself. So, will you help?
Uraraka stepped onto the arena, barely heeding the excited screaming from present Mike. Across from her was Oyaneko Fujikoro. He was tall, though not as tall as she was, and lanky, having what Izuku had once described as Morphin syndrome. Along with this, he possessed a defensive quirk she would definitely have trouble with. She had seen him use it during the cavalry battle to almost stop anyone who got too close. How would she beat him?
Begin!
Mount Lady declared. Uraraka rushed at Oyaneko, reducing her gravity after the first step. She was hoping she could get to him before he could raise his guard, but the lanky blue-haired boy simply stood in place. Less than 3 seconds after the fight began, the hero student was barely 2 meters away before a shimmering orange barrier appeared in front of her. It was somewhat comical watching her bounce off the ward, almost falling on her butt from how fast she had been going. Thankfully, she caught herself and simply skid back a bit, eyeing the barrier as it slowly faded. Oyaneko had not moved, his hands still in his pockets.
Whoa! Looks like Uraraka was stopped in her tracks.
President Mike called out.
Oyaneko isn't much of a fighter,
Izuku explained.
but his quirk is almost perfect defense. Near as we know, it can stop anything. Not even gases can pass through.
Looks like this'll be a battle of wits then.
Mike declared. He's right, you know, Oyaneko pointed out. I can't really fight worth kidney beans, but unless you can pass my barrier, you can't lay a hand on me. So, hero student, how will you solve this dilemma? Uraraka noted his tone wasn't condescending or demeaning, wasn't resigned either. It was more like a... She gasped as it hit her. Teaching. Oyaneko knew he couldn't beat her, so he was treating this fight like a puzzle. She just needed to figure out how to get past his barrier. She stepped back and paced in front of him, looking at him. He didn't move when he raised his barrier, and it went up pretty quick. She wasn't sure how she could outpace that speed, not yet anyways. What about angles, though? She had only ever seen him use his barrier like a wall, so perhaps he could only erect them on ground level? And how big could he make them? Uraraka gave a chuckle. It looked like Midoriya's analysis skills rubbed off on her a bit. Well, may as well put it to good use. Still with reduced gravity, she leaped in the air at Oyaneko. Releasing her quirk in midair, she fell at the Gen Ed student with her leg extended. Oyaneko watched her descent and shrugged. Again, 2 meters away, she was met with a barrier. This one, however, was in the air and at an angle, perfect for blocking her kick. Clenching her teeth, she kicked off the barrier and landed on the ground. Now she knew his quirk could be used in midair. However, she also knew he had watched her. This meant his quirk was controlled with his sight. He had to look at where his barrier went up. So, she also noted every time he used his barrier, it had been within 2 meters. Was that a range limit or a range preference? Come on. Oyaneko was now doing a small dance. You gotta think faster than that. Villains won't give you time to think. Hurry up. Uraraka gritted her teeth and formed an idea. She had watched Cementos repair the arena earlier. She knew the arena wasn't a single mass of stone, but rather a lot of smooth concrete blocks laid in place. They were snug enough that they didn't need mortar to be held in place. That also meant they weren't technically secure. The hero student smirked and rested her hands on the ground. Oyaneko and the audience watched with curiosity, then shock as Uraraka stood up, lifting a pair of concrete blocks with her quirk. She had a knowing smirk as she moved one of the blocks above the other before pulling her hands back. With a grunt of effort, she punched both blocks at Oyaneko. One block flew right at him, the other flew at an angle which, once gravity was restored, meant it would hit Oyaneko from above. This time, the gen ed student had a look of fear as he raised a barrier 2 meters in front of him to stop the first block, then quickly pulled that barrier down and pulled it back up less than a half meter above his head, to stop the other block. He gave a nervous chuckle as Uraraka smiled. Now she knew he couldn't move while holding a barrier, could only create one barrier at a time, and only up to a certain size. Otherwise, he could have simply raised one big barrier to stop both blocks, or dodged either one. Now she knew what to do. Pulling up one more block from the ground, she threw this one at an overhead angle at Oyaneko while rushing right at him. The blue-haired boy watched the student. With their speed and the angle of the concrete block, they would both hit him at the same time, and from 2 different angles, for a single barrier to stop them both. For the first time in the entire match, Oyaneko leaped to the side and raised a barrier in front of him, thus dodging the block and stopping Oichako, or so he thought. The moment he dodged, Uraraka surprised everyone by leaping up at the block. At the exact moment Oyaneko raised his barrier, Uraraka used the side of the flying block to leap at Oyaneko from an upward angle. By the time he realized what she had done, she was already over the top of his barrier. The gen ed boy gasped as Uraraka's massive hand grabbed his face, negating his gravity, and dashed several meters before hurling him from the arena and restoring his gravity. The gen ed student glanced behind him and a barrier formed to stop his flight before canceling it. Then he quickly looked down to create another one underneath. He was now sitting on a barrier above the grass, still within jumping distance of the arena. Looking back at Uraraka, he saw her standing on the edge, smirking and popping her knuckles. He knew this meant that if he tried to leap back to the ring, she would simply punch him back out again. Instead of frowning, Oyaneko laughed. Well done, hero student. With those words, he canceled the barrier from underneath and softly landed on the grass below. The instant his feet touched the grass, the PA blared and Mount Lady declared Uraraka the winner. As the fight was declared ended, Uraraka leaped down from the ring and walked to Oyaneko. Didn't hurt you too much, did I? She asked with genuine concern. I'm fine, Oyaneko laughed. You did good out there, thinking outside of the box. I look forward to seeing how you handle Kagero-san. He bowed and began walking back towards the 1C area as Cementos got to work making more concrete for the arena. Uraraka smiled and walked back towards her own class, feeling giddy about how she was able to outthink her foe. Honestly, it was only because of hanging around Izuku that she could even think like that. She definitely had to thank the adorable midget for the help later. She giggled as she thought about Izuku, wondering if he'd accept a dinner invitation later. When she entered the hallway leading to the 1A area, she stopped in her tracks. Not far away was that pretty girl from before. The one looking for 1C. It looked like she was talking to some older students, maybe her classmates. Uraraka just stood in place and looked at the golden-haired beauty, blushing a bit when she laughed at something another student said. It was at this point she remembered this pretty lady was the same girl who first asked Izuku about his past a few weeks ago. How had she missed the girl back then? After a minute or two, the group turned away and walked down the hall, leaving Uraraka alone. She stayed rooted in place, her mind still on the pretty girl. Holy crap, she whispered to herself. I think I'm bi.
And we're back!
Mike shouted in a few minutes after Uraraka's fight ended.
With the arena repaired, again, we're ready to get started. Call it off, Mito-kun.
You got it.
Izuku laughed.
Up next is President Mike. Are you seeing this?
To the confusion of everyone present, Hatsume Mei and Moriboshi Ayame both walked onto the arena at the same time from the same side. Only increasing the confusion, Moriboshi was wearing an ungodly amount of equipment and gear. Between the gauntlets, the greaves, the helmet, and everything else, it was almost reminiscent of a certain Speedy Hero's outfit.
What's going on?
Mike asked.
Why does Moriboshi have all that?
Izuku vocalized.
Well, the non-hero course students are allowed to use support gear, so... Read to amaze the crowds, Mito-chan.
Mei asked her compatriot. Oh, sorry, there was a typo there. Let me redo that line.
Ready to amaze the crowds, Moro-chan?
Mei asked her compatriot. With a nod from the smirking gen ed student, Mei tapped the headset in her ear and cleared her throat.
Good afternoon, UA Academy,
Mei yelled. As Mei yelled, her voice poured from the PA system.
What the? How is she? Did she hack our audio systems?
Mike asked in shock. Sorry, y'all.
Just...
Izuku was covering his face to stifle a laugh.
Just roll with it. I'm Hatsume Mei,
the pink-haired inventor yelled.
Support course student today. Support gear genius in the future. And today, my assistant and I have one hell of a presentation for you. So any support gear companies better pay close attention. Arms up, Moro-chan.
The Gen Ed Ice Girl nodded and raised her covered hands high. Mei pulled out a remote control of some kind and hit a button on it. Mere seconds later, snow streamed from the gauntlets, slowly covering the arena.
To start things off, specialized gauntlets for anyone with ice quirks. A quirk that's hard to control? Just want to have a snowball fight in July? With these gauntlets, any quirk-generated ice could be ground into snow in mere seconds. They can also function as fire extinguishers. Amazing!
Moriboshi exclaimed with insincere awe as she pirouetted around the arena, spraying snow left and right.
Should we stop her?
Mike asked Midoriya. The quirkless student simply laughed and shook his head as Hatsume demonstrated the next piece of equipment. With the sole exception of Class 1C, who were all laughing their heads off, the audience was silent as Hatsume and Moriboshi did their 10-minute demonstration of ice-reliant support gear. At the conclusion, Mei kept her word and simply stepped out of bounds, though it was another few moments before Mount Lady called it.
See, Moro-chan?
Mei smiled to her assistant.
Told you that wasn't so bad. Yeah, you were right.
the icy girl admitted.
Now, help me out of these. The belt's beginning to chafe.
May laughed in reply and began the task of removing the gear, reminded of when she had helped Izuku remove his mobile desk. Meanwhile, Todoroki was busy emailing the 10-minute video he had recorded on his phone to his own email, to make sure it would be safe on his computer. Not only was that actually some pretty neat gear, but for some reason he thought Moriboshi looked pleasing in armor like that. Nezu was in his office, chuckling from the display. He figured something like this would happen if Hatsume was involved. He knew her demonstration would make an impact too. Now he could only wait and see just how many gear companies would compete for the privilege of working with the first-year savant. He was shaken from his thoughts by a heavy knocking on the door. Checking the camera, Nezu quirked an eyebrow when he saw who was standing outside. Flipping a switch, Nezu opened the door from his desk, and his guest calmly stepped in, not reacting to the door closing behind him. He didn't say anything as he gave a slight bow before sitting in the chair across from the principal.
You're here a few days early, Nezu started. Midoriya won't be told until Monday.
I am aware.
The man said with a gravelly voice.
There was a tropical storm brewing off the Hawaiian coast. So, I had to take an early flight, or else risk being several days late.
I guess that is understandable, Nezu shrugged.
So, at the moment, what do you think of young Midoriya?
The man only smiled, or at least what Nezu assumed was a smile.
I look forward to testing him.
Alright, talk about a cliffhanger. That's where we're going to go ahead and leave off this this episode. Because my voice is starting to be a little iffy. I've recorded a couple of episodes tonight. But thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening along. Very, very intrigued to see what happens next. Definitely looking forward to when I make another episode of this, but that will be a few days out most likely. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Liking and commenting really helps with the algorithms, gets the videos out there, allows us to grow as a community, and subscribing, of course, we're almost to the 500 subscriber mark. And like I said in yesterday's voiced video, once we hit 500 subscribers, we'll be able to do memberships on the channel and stuff like that. And what I'm thinking with those is to give people access to content quicker, like a few days early or when I have it available. So that's an idea that I had for those. If you guys have any other ideas of things we could do on the channel for the memberships, let me know. And all that being said, thanks again for spending time with me today, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next video. Ciao for now, lovelies.